back in 2014, my first exposure to the FNAF franchise was Markiplier, as I'm sure a lot of other people's first exposure was. Now in 2014, I love Markiplier, watched him all the time, so I saw this video May recommended of him playing this new horror game that had this weird, what is that, a seal? The core cast of mascots for the FNAF franchise consists of 4 animatronics: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. And out of these characters, the one who seems to get the most fanfare is weirdly Bonnie. I say weirdly because Bonnie is kind of the least interesting of the FNAF 1 cast. All the other characters have a very clear deal or personality of sorts. Freddy's got a top hat and a bow tie and some very expressive eyebrows, and he's the most stealthy of the group, implying that he's the best at his job. Chica has her Let's Eat bib and shows off a lot of different moods throughout the nights, and also of course rummaging around the kitchen. Foxy is a broken down pirate animatronic, which is just interesting on its own. But then we look at Bonnie. All the characters thus far have had unique bodies, but then Bonnie is just his head, because his body is completely reused from Freddy. He has no eyebrows, he's a very unnatural color, he's got this weird jawline. Bonnie doesn't have very many distinctive features to him, and I think that's part of the reason why he's so popular. It's a pretty well-known fact that during the development of FNAF 1, Scott Cawthon himself was actually scared of Bonnie. He even had nightmares about him. And he's also often considered the scariest among fans for that game. And I think the reason Bonnie is so effective in FNAF 1 is because he doesn't convey anything to the player. While Freddy will play his music box and laugh at you, Chica will throw around pots and pans to give you weird looks to the cameras, Foxy sings in his cove and doesn't like being watched. But Bonnie, being different from the others, doesn't make any noise, nor does he show much expression in his face. He's always the first to move on night 1 in most nights of the game. Sometimes he's looking right at you, sometimes he's not. When Freddy and Chica enter the kitchen, for example, they'll always do something in there. Chica rummages around stuff, probably looking for stuff to eat, cause she, is there with the bib. Freddy goes in there and plays his music box. But Bonnie seems to gravitate towards other employees-only areas, specifically the backstage, where he'll just stand there and do nothing and look at the camera, and he'll do the exact same thing in the supply closet. While Freddy and Chica convey that they might have some kind of goal in going to certain places, Bonnie has none of that, and he literally just stands places. So long story short, he's a weirdo. A cool thing about the supply closet is that if you look at Bonnie's eyes, you can see that one of them is looking at you and the other one isn't. Just thought that was a cool, creepy thing to point out. I'm editing right now, I just thought I'd throw this in. Another thing I wanted to throw in is that as of the day I'm uploading this, there is officially only 1 week left to get your own turtle plushie, and this is the most prized achievement of my channel. I'm very, very proud of it, so if you're interested in picking one up, make sure you get it while you still can. Bonnie's lack of a distinctive personality or features is exactly why he's such a good example of how sometimes less is more when it comes to character design. If I had posted this poll back in, say, 2015, Foxy would have most definitely been the winner. He was undoubtedly the most popular character from FNAF 1 during the early years. But it seems that over the years, Foxy has become less popular while Bonnie has been rising in popularity. So for this video, I'm going to be going over the course of the franchise to see how Bonnie has changed and evolved over time, and how his popularity has been rising due to that. Back to that less is more point, they ripped his face off, and people loved it. Withered Bonnie is easily the most popular character to come out of FNAF 2, rivaled only by, the puppet, which to even rival a character with that much lore significance is crazy. Well, I guess there's also Mangle. These 3 characters from FNAF 2 are really, really popular. All the dark shadows in the back of his endoskeleton, paired with the little red lights where his eyes used to be. This is a super menacing character, and he's easily the most striking of the Withered designs. This is definitely made apparent by the fact that he's the only Withered animatronic to have a Funko Pop and a Mystery Mini. The other ones got neither of those. But of course, Withered Bonnie isn't the only Bonnie in FNAF 2, cause there's a lot of Bonnies in FNAF 2. Well, 3. That's not a lot, but it's a lot. Toy animatronics in FNAF 2 are supposed to be sort of counters to the regular counterparts. Toy Freddy's all big and goofy, while the original Freddy is all proper and fancy. Chica becomes less bird and more woman. So now for Bonnie, you take his extremely simple approach from the original counterpart, and then just kinda, cover him in makeup and everything, Toy Bonnie, he's kinda slightly. But it makes sense why he's so different, because the original is also here. Then I guess I should probably mention Shadow Bonnie, even though he's pretty irrelevant to the video topic, but, Shadow Bonnie exists. Or I'm sorry, as I should call him. But basically, FNAF 1 set the groundwork for Bonnie, and then FNAF 2 did 2 completely different but really creative and unique things with him. Both of which paid off in the eyes of the fans. But then for the next game, Scott made a very, very interesting choice. And, the series is called Five Nights at Freddy's, So now we come to the age-old question. Is Springtrap a Bonnie? Well, no, he's a Springtrap, but let me explain. Throughout the series' history, Springtrap has mostly been treated as a completely different rabbit character. He's never really grouped in with the Bonnies, which makes sense, because look at them side by side. These are very, very, very wildly different rabbits. Not only just in color scheme, but also in shape language, colors, occupations. Bonnie and Springtrap are very distinct from each other. But then we take a look at Springtrap's original counterpart, Spring Bonnie, who literally has Bonnie in the name. So do we count Spring Bonnie as a Bonnie? I personally wouldn't. I get it if you do, but I don't know. I count Spring Bonnie as more of a Springtrap. Now that I'm actually saying this out loud and recording it, this is a really stupid sounding conversation. But if you think about it, each FNAF character is kind of like a Pokemon type. And I say Springtrap is a separate category than Bonnie. It's like a whole spectrum. So that's all cleared up. Springtrap, we're not considering him a Bonnie. I already did a whole video on Springtrap, which I might remake eventually because it's a little outdated. But with all that being said, Bonnie's not in FNAF 3. They didn't make a phantom of him. Which, although Scott never confirmed it directly, I think it's pretty safe to assume that this was done because another Green Rabbit in the same game as the Green Rabbit character that's the main focus would be kinda weird. So as sad as Bonnie not being in the game is, it does make sense. Shall he forever live on in the catalog of characters that Puppet Steve sent to Funko? Nightmare Bonnie is so funny looking. Like, yes, I know, back when we were younger, we all thought he was peak horror. But in retrospect, this is just such a silly looking design. You could argue that all the nightmares are pretty silly looking, but I feel like Nightmare Bonnie just has a specific quality to him. The overbite, the eyes that are just like popping out of the sockets. I feel like his horror factor has also been slightly tarnished by these images. Gotta love the way his hand clips through the door frame in the jump scare. But for what he is, Nightmare Bonnie's pretty cool, and so is his recolor, Jacko Bonnie. I was very vocal in my Chica video with how I thought that Jacko Chica was significantly better looking than Nightmare Chica. I think Nightmare Bonnie looks a lot better than Jacko Bonnie does, but it's honestly just down to personal preference. But I do think Jacko Bonnie is significantly outshined by Jacko Chica, just because Jacko Chica, she gets a voice later on, and also she's got a cool pumpkin. I just think she's better. But yeah, I don't really have too many strong opinions about Bonnie in FNAF 4, just like he's alright. So now on to Sister Location. Sister Location has a couple new characters, so to make up for that, they sidelined a few characters. Most notably Chica, but also kind of Bonnie. I say kind of, because he's still part of the main cast, but he's more of a side character to Funtime Freddy than his own thing. Or maybe I should be saying she, because Bon Bon is another one of those FNAF characters where the gender is almost completely ambiguous. Like, the Ultimate Guide completely refers to Bon Bon as she, but then when it gets to Bonnet, it says that she's the first female Bonnie, so what's up with that? I think Bon Bon and Bonnet are both pretty cool, but they're very grouped in with Funtime Freddy, so it's hard to really consider them truly their own characters. But neat nonetheless. Pizza Simulator. So now Rockstar Bonnie is honestly the best out of the 4 Rockstars in my opinion. He can be pretty spooky at times, he's got a really fun voice. But like the other Rockstars, he's just kind of uninteresting. But I like him, he's cool. I will say though, the 2 different shades of pink for his eyelids and his cheeks is really awful. Also, Rockstar Bonnie is home to my literal least favorite render in the FNAF series. Why is he looking at me like that?
Why so blue? You know I'll be true, and now I'll be slippery.
So in UCN's big collection of FNAF characters, there are 5 Bonnies in that mix. Classic Bonnie, Toy Bonnie, Withered Bonnie, Nightmare Bonnie, and Rockstar Bonnie. And if you count Dee Dee's roster, Shadow Bonnie and Bonnet. Classic Bonnie's mechanic is the most interesting out of all the Bonnies in this game, which is not even remotely close to his original mechanics. So in Ultimate Custom Night, Bonnie is in Foxy's Pirate's Cove. He's just like sharing it with Foxy now. Which, I mean, nice to know they're good friends. But what? The whole mechanic involves these figures on your desk in your office. When Foxy's figure's on the desk, you look at Foxy on the camera. When Bonnie's figure is on the desk, you don't look at it, because if you do, he'll scream at you and disable your cameras. I'm honestly not sure if I can consider this a jump scare, but, it's kind of a jump scare in this game. Then Toy Bonnie and Withered Bonnie are exactly the same as they are in FNAF 2, just without all the extra steps of making their way to the office. They'll just kind of spawn in there and do the same thing they did in that game. Nightmare Bonnie is just like, buy a Bonnie plush from the prize counter. Then Rockstar Bonnie is a character whose mechanic is one of the very few that actually involves searching through the cameras. You basically just have to look around the building to see if you can find his guitar in the cameras, and then when you find it, you click on it, and then he'll go away. If you don't find it, he'll kill you. But yeah, nothing too interesting for Ultimate Custom Night, but at the same time, there's a lot of characters to give attention, so it makes sense. Now let's move on to Help Wanted, where there's also, since you made it this far into the video, let me almost to 50,000 subscribers, you should subscribe really fast. Do it now, quick, I'm gonna die! So, let's just start with the most important thing for Help Wanted. It butchered almost all the characters. Like Steelwool, you really improved with your modeling skills when Security Breach came around. But oh my goodness. Luckily though, Bonnie is one of the characters who wasn't hit nearly as hard as others, Springtrap. His color palette is a lot less, purple, I guess. It's a lot more of a blue leaning, but then also his lighter color is literally like white. It's an interesting choice for sure. I don't think it looks bad necessarily, but it also isn't like preferable. I definitely prefer his original color scheme from Scott, but then again, it's not too bad. He also doesn't really look like he's made of fabric anymore. I don't know what's up with that. But now we're on to quite the interesting thing. Lawsuit. So you know that iconic red guitar that Bonnie's had since the first game? Well, they changed it in Help Wanted, and that wasn't just a design choice, that was something that they legally were forced to do. Bonnie's guitar is based off of a real-life guitar called a Flying V guitar. Around like 2017, 2018, a bunch of copyright issues started emerging with this guitar, and it struck Funko in 2017. And due to this, Scott decided that no future FNAF games or merchandise will feature this guitar anymore. So Steelwool redesigned Bonnie's guitar to this copyright-free version, and this same guitar shape that Steelwool came up with actually carried over to the console ports of FNAF 2, with Toy Bonnie's guitar even being missing when he enters the party room now. Guitar in the office of FNAF 3 was completely removed, and then in FNAF 6, Rockstar Bonnie's guitar was changed. And now this new guitar has made it to the big screen. So yeah, if you didn't know the deep copyright lore of Bonnie's guitar, now you do. And Help Wanted also introduces Beacon Bonnie and Neon Bonnie, but I don't have anything to say about them. They exist. But now we get to a certain point. Bonnie has remained super popular within the fandom, even though he hasn't had a super major role in any game since FNAF 4, arguably since FNAF 2. And I think that's in part due to him being outshined by another rabbit character. I mean, Afton, Springtrap, Spring Bonnie, the Mimic, whatever you want to call him, he's gonna be in the spotlight. He's really important to the story of most of the games. And he's also just as popular as Bonnie. But Bonnie hasn't been significant for a really long time, and fans are hungry. So let's look what they did in Security Breach. Breadcrumbs. Literal breadcrumbs. So there's a lot of little side plots you can follow by collecting the messages in Security Breach, and one of those side plots is the Glamrock Bonnie mystery. It's a notable thing about the Pizzaplex that every attraction is themed after a character. Fazzer Blast is for Freddy, Roxy Raceway is for Roxy, obviously, Monty Golf is obviously for Monty, Mazercise and the Cupcake Bakery is for Chica, the West Arcade is for DJ Music Man, the Superstar Daycare is for the daycare attendant, but then there's two attractions with no animatronics to go along with them, El Chips and Bonnie Bowl. But let's just forget about El Chips since I don't think he was ever at the Pizzaplex. But then we got Bonnie Bowl, which is a very peculiar attraction. There's an empty stage in the dining area of Bonnie Bowl, and when Freddy interacts with it, he says that he misses him. The messages say that the last time Bonnie was seen in the Pizzaplex was leaving his green room, entering Monty Golf, and then that night he got decommissioned there, to where he was then afterwards replaced by Monty in the band. And due to a lot of hints in the game indicating that Monty has anger and jealousy issues, a lot of fans theorized that he destroyed Bonnie to take his place in the band, which is pretty plausible. But in Security Breach, they talk about a Bonnie, a brand new version of Bonnie, who has story, he has backstory, he has a reason to be there, but he's not actually in the game because the game takes place after he's already dead. So you can imagine with how interesting the concept of this mythical Glamrock Bonnie sounds, the fans got pretty attached to it. In comes this specific fan design for Glamrock Bonnie, which is probably one of the most popular fan characters in this entire series' history. Not counting fanverse characters, obviously, since those are technically official now. But even then, it might even rival those. This design was made by @Snartles on Twitter, who notably does a lot of art for the Streamly, Prince, and Dawko. And her Glamrock Bonnie design is super popular. There's been fan models, fan sculptures, bootleg, someone made an entire cosplay of it. And I feel like all of this just really demonstrates how badly the community just wants to see a new Bonnie. I did a poll and he was the most voted thing people wanted for Ruin. The Bonnie demand is at an all-time high, and I think it's about time we get a new version of this character that's significant. And with Ruin releasing next month, we'll have to see if he shows up. Because there's clearly something special about this character that makes him so popular. So yeah, that's about it, and I'll see you in the next video. Plush out now, only a week left, and subscribe because I want to get to 50k. Okay, goodbye.